Hi, everybody. Welcome to another SuperSpeed Golf webinar. Today, we're going to be talking all about what to do with your speed training during the season. Is one of my favorite topics, Tyler. Joined by my good friend here, Tyler Standifird again. Tyler, I think this is a big piece because we work in the off season a lot to gain speed. We work really hard, on this training, and then we want to see results, right? So I think today I really want to talk about a lot of those pieces about what types of results you should see, how to manage those, and then how to continue to get gains during the season. I mean, this is something you've obviously worked with a lot of your players with too, right?
Yeah, I think the piece that I always look at with this, Mike, and again, I'm working with a lot of players in Utah, a lot of my research subjects, right, who we do this over a winter. They're great, they're excited, they come out of winter season, they're like, Tyler, wow, I'm hitting the ball further, everything's going great. And then they just kind of don't know what to do in season. They have less, maybe a little less time because they're playing more and all these things. And so I think understanding what to do, not only so that we can maximize those results where it matters the most, but also so that we can make sure that we are carrying over our gains from maybe a period of time of more intense training. And then we're set up to take the next step during the next off season if we have them.
I mean, if there's one thing that I can give people a thought on, having done this now for over 10 years, really helping, a lot of players, including a lot of the best players in the world with their speed training, is this is not something that it's like a one and done. You don't pick this up for 5 or 6 weeks and get a little bit of a gain and stop. Like these players are continually working with these products, continually working with speed programs. And I also feel like it's important to talk about the fact that it's being integrated throughout the different parts of their program. I when we first started this, it was very rare that a player like had a specific speed training program. Now, like you talk to just about any player, that's playing professionally around the world, and they'll give you a lot of detail about what their speed and power program looks like. And so that's one of the big things I want to look at today with all of you that are spending some time with us. I really want to look at some of that detail of like how do you actually put all these different protocols together into like a weekly program. What should you do with your overspeed training? What are some of, and I want to share with you some of the I would say best case scenario things that we've seen from a lot of the best players in the world and how they incorporate all of this. Please remember, if you do have any questions while we're going through this short little presentation, um, just type them in the Zoom chat, the Q&A, or not the chat, the Q&A panel, and we will hang on and get to as many of those as we possibly can, during the webinar. All right, let's get into this, Tyler. Let's talk about in-season training. First of all, for a long time, we have discussed that there's, four big categories to what it takes to have an optimal, or really what it takes for a player to hit a golf ball a long way. What we've really done with the programming that's now in the app and the different types of protocols is we've given you a way to kind of assess where you are in some of those categories and then provide very specific protocols for any areas that might need improvement. And what we're typically finding is that most people, very few people are operating at like 100% capacity in one area and 0% capacity in another, right? What we're generally finding is that every one of those categories kind of has room for improvement for people. And, that's kind of what I want to get into today as far as to how to manage all of that. So, if you don't remember from some of our other webinars, those categories are typically physical. So, that's going to be, not just strength and mobility, but all the different characteristics of your body that can affect your golf swing. Includes range of motion, includes flexibility, mobility, strength, power, speed, all of these things that are going on in the body physically do contribute. And, I feel like if you're trying to create a really comprehensive speed training program, you can't overlook this one, right? Like, Tyler, do you see many athletes overlooking, you know, not necessarily having a 4 day a week in the gym, stringent routine, but at least taking a good, idea of what's going on with their body, how that person's body is affecting speed and power, and then, moving forward, what are the things they're doing to make it better?
Yeah, man, it sure feels like, Mike, 10 years ago, the answer to that question would be a lot of people are overlooking that. But these days, I don't think that's the case at all. I think our elite level players are they have that a part of everything they do, like you said, in whatever capacity that makes sense for them, both in and out of the season. But I think also, Mike, and I hope what we're starting to see is that our amateur golfers are starting to understand that the better they can function physically, the better chance they have to be successful on the golf course. And so, yeah, I hope that we're getting individuals that are doing better at that. But I think sometimes the barrier there, Mike, becomes just knowing what to do, kind of how to do it, what to target. I think once they have that, I think hopefully we're seeing more and more that are doing that, at least a few times a week.
Well, we'll get into that in some more detail here in a little bit, but I think we can definitely be a solution to that problem. Obviously, swing mechanics are also very important. We've heard many webinars and various things from us on swing mechanics. I mean, all of these are very critical to creating speed and power. Now, though, I think we've pieced together some very, you get a lot of bang for your buck, if you will, in the protocols we've created on the mechanics side because we've really filtered out a lot of the stylistic components of mechanics that you get a lot of when you're taking golf lessons or working on different things, and really gotten down to the roots of efficiency and what are some of the movement patterns that result in efficient motion. So we'll talk about those a little bit today too, but we're really excited about our mechanics protocols. Looking at club fitting, how does the club that you're using, affect how far you're hitting the ball. That's a big one too. I don't think this is necessarily one of those things that you're monitoring on a daily basis, but it's certainly something that you need to be taking notice of in different segments of the program at different spots that you get to over the course of all the training cycles. I think it's very important to kind of take a really hard look at what the how that club is performing in your hands because I mean that's a big deal when you get more swing speed, this can affect, what shaft you have, what loft is on the club of your driver, all kinds of things here that you can use to optimize and get more distance. And then there's, of course, our neurological training, which is our more pure speed training, which I hope most of you are more familiar with at this point. But that's also training that needs to be managed over the course of a season, and there's some specific things there. So I don't know, Tyler, we got a lot to talk about here. I honestly, this webinar could probably be 3 or 4 hours long. So I really want to hit some of the high points on this, but then, if we have questions about getting into the details of any of it, I want to go with that too. I think the 30,000 foot view here is that if you are not in some way managing all of these four aspects of your golf game, I just think that you're leaving a lot on the table. It's literally like leaving money on the table. Every one of these areas has low hanging fruit, has things that are easy to accomplish, that has things that are hard to accomplish. The more work you put in, the better. But if you work on all of these categories at once, instead of just kind of picking and choosing one or the other, like I a lot of times have people like, okay, I'm going to commit to a golf fitness program this year, and that's what they do. And then, really the other things that they're doing kind of fall by the wayside. Or I'm going to really commit to taking some golf lessons and work on my mechanics. Well, yeah, but then the fitness and the speed stuff kind of starts to fall. Or, I'm going to get fit for the clubs I need for the rest of my life. And I'm going in April, and that's what I'm going to use for the next 5 years. Not the best way to do it, right? And then, on the neurological side, and we have a lot of people that have done this, and you do get results here because this is really low hanging fruit for anybody. You grab a set of speed sticks and go through some protocols, you're going to see some gains. That one I think anyone can pick up and do. I think if you support it with these other areas, though, I think that's where we start to see the really big gains and the more longevity of all of this working into your golf game.
Well, and I'll just add, Mike, and I kind of mentioned this with the physical, and then obviously we're off and running, but I feel like I feel like we need to understand that again for our amateur golfers, for those recreational players who are just being able to get out and play, whatever, 5, 6, 7 times a month, maybe even a little bit less. Again, we know how much low-hanging fruit there is to the neurological piece, but I also am starting to learn and see the low-hanging fruit from the other areas as well. Whereas I think it used to be, well, that physical training piece, that club fitting, well, that's just really reserved for the plus handicaps at my club. That's reserved for the professional guys. Even I had an experience getting fit last year for my first time ever, a phenomenal experience that allowed me to minimize some of my misses and shave strokes off my handicap.
Mhm.
I just think that like, man, these other pieces of the puzzle, well, let's not overlook those. Let's figure out a way to tie everything together, like you're saying, Mike, and get the very best out of what we were doing both in season and out of season.
Yeah, and again, I'll reiterate, if you haven't downloaded the SuperSpeed Golf app, please download the app because that's really what you're getting out of that app. It's allowing you to get detailed programs for all of these different areas, all in, all in your pocket. So, it's things that we used to do at our academies where we had multiple coaches building these programs. And I mean, we've really simplified it down to at least getting you off to a great start, for a significant amount of time in all of these different areas that can help you. So download the app and check it out. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised with everything that we put in there. Let's talk about the, kind of big one for us, overspeed training. How do we optimize overspeed training throughout the season? What do we need to do? And I think it all boils down initially to our training cycles. Now, a lot of people still, buy speed sticks and they're like, well, what do I do first? And the first thing you start with is our level one protocol, but it doesn't stop there. We need to do level one. We need to do that for a significant amount of time. We need to then move on to level two. And you'll notice that these things always kind of function in these like 10-week primary training phases, and then they're offset by maintenance phases and ramp up phases. Essentially, a primary training phase, we want you to train 3 days a week with a day off in between. This is that intense period where we're trying to get a big jump in speed and we're trying to make that stabilize or become permanent. And then we need to actually, or what we've found to be optimal at least, is to take a break, essentially. Take a break without putting them in the closet and not doing it ever again, right? Take a break by moving that down to like once a week, maybe even twice a month is fine, but at least for about 4 weeks, just to let everything in the system normalize and then get ready for that next training phase. Tyler, you want to talk a little more about that?
Yeah, the biggest thing with these maintenance phases, and there's so much good research out there which talks about how much we need at really high velocities, high speed type movements in order to maintain our speeds. And the research is very consistent in this across a lot of sports, a lot of different movements, that if you can get that one really good high level training maybe once every 7 to 9 days, that's enough time to maintain the benefits that you got from a speed standpoint. You're not going to lose some of those things that you got from that training. The other thing that allows us to do right is come down a little bit and allow us to prepare for the next really intensive cycle, a little bit of a cyclical process of this training. So, like the one take home message I would always say, Mike, like if I could shout this as loudly as possible would be like that one time a week maintenance phase, like it's not nothing. It is significant. Please, if you don't do anything else during your in-season training when you're busy, find one good time where you can do a really good overspeed training session so that you can maintain those gains you've had from the 3 times a week. I just cannot stress that enough.
Yeah, and this is a question we get about the app sometimes too. So like it'll track your progress through level one and level two, and it'll tell you exactly how many sessions you've done and tell you when you're finished. The maintenance phase, once it starts, doesn't have a distinct endpoint because this is where the first, I would say, big variance from player to player comes in. Some players, I think 4 weeks is fine, and then they're going to get right back into their next phase. Maybe that's a player that has a lot of time. Maybe they play golf 2 or 3 times a week and they have the other days to do some more intense training. Um, that's fine. For a lot of your players that maybe only play once a week or twice a month, I think you can extend that maintenance phase for a long time. Also, your players that are playing competitively in tournaments, I think a lot of times there's other things that may become priority during those lead up to a tournament, lead up into season, and those maintenance phases can get extended, but they don't go away. They always need to be there. But there's a lot of variance there. So when you're in the app and you're in a maintenance phase, you actually do have to check off essentially manually, say I'm done with the maintenance phase, and then it'll move you into the ramp up for for the second training cycle and get you back into that next primary training phase. But that's why we did it that way. It's really because like there isn't a set time limit on those. Like I've had players that are in maintenance phases for 4 to 6 months and then they get back into their other training in the next off season. Have others that take a 4 week break and just drive and power right into it. So some really interesting things there. I think that's very important to follow that pattern. So let's talk about some of the things that we do during a primary training phase. Obviously, we're doing 3 days a week with a day off in between. So that's a pretty intense amount of overspeed training, even though, those sessions only take, maybe they take 10 minutes, a little bit more with warm up. Um, it's still an intense physical activity that you're doing there. Now, during this, other protocols that I want you to be doing in the app, for sure, it's the warm up protocols. Okay. You definitely need to be doing that dynamic warm up protocol before you do this every time. It's going to make it a whole lot safer on your body. It's going to get you ready and prepared to peak out your performance during that session. This is very important that you do these warm up protocols when you're going through it, especially the dynamic warm up during that cycle. Now, I will say that when somebody just starts out doing, overspeed training, there is a good chance for a little bit of high before and after speed variance. So like during your first couple weeks of doing this training, you may see a 5, 6 mile an hour jump from before and after the session if you test right before and you test right after. And I'm sure a lot of you out there that are watching this have seen that in your own practice. That's not a bad thing. That's exactly what should be happening. Now, is that something that we should be doing maybe right before we go out and play golf? My answer to that would be, probably definitively no. Like I usually tell people, give yourself at least half an hour, an hour is even better. If you're going to do this training like before a round of golf in the first training cycle, especially in the first like month that you're doing it, don't use this as a warm up right before you go play. Because the last time I checked, like hitting your 7 iron 10 yards over the green sucks. We don't have this issue with our baseball products, Tyler. They don't mind if it goes like another 10 rows up into the outfield. But for your base, that's actually not even 100% true in baseball. Because, again, you're functioning with more motor units going than you're used to, right? So timing's a little different. Like things are a little different right after that session this early on. So I wouldn't use these as warm-up protocols ever, but I certainly wouldn't use them right before a round during this very first training cycle. It's also why we built our level 1 and level 2 warm-up protocols. The level 1 warm-up protocol is possible to do a little bit before your round, but you'll notice that there's a lot less swings in that, and there's a lot less of this, kind of that overspeed training effect that's going to happen. When we get into the more advanced cycles and your body's more used to doing this training and we're not seeing as big of before and after shifts is when we can get into some more advanced things to do with it right before a round. And I think that confusion comes in, Tyler, because like a lot of people see they see Podrig or they see guys out on tour doing this right before a round and they're like, well, shouldn't I be doing that? It's like, well, they've been doing this for years and years and years, and they're actually doing a different thing that we call neuromuscular priming, which is more like our level 2 warm up protocol. And that's a whole other thing. But that's just getting motor units going, right?
Yeah, and I would just say, not to mention, like these pros also, their entire life, they've gone through a much more significant warm up prior to their round of golf than you have. Typical amateur warm up is run to the tee right before, take a few swings, roll a few putts, and head out. Right? These guys are getting to the course, a long time before, getting that body prepped, and then doing that neuromuscular priming. Again, I love the idea, Mike, of incorporating a warm up into your in season training. I think be aware that maybe the first few times you do it, maybe you feel a little bit different on the first tee. That's an okay thing, right? I think that would be a big piece of the puzzle that I think every golfer could benefit from taking 5, 10 minutes going through that level 1 kind of pre-round warm up.
Mhm.
Just get the body loose and ready for that first tee shot.
So another big piece to look at is fatigue. So it's also very important during this first training cycle that you're always training when you can produce your maximum speed. Now, there's a piece in the app that tracks, it's called effort score. Effort score doesn't mean like how hard you tried on that session. What it means is, are the speeds you're producing with the super speed clubs during that session above or below the average speeds that you've had during your training? So you always want effort score to be functioning at 100% or greater. And if you see it dip down into that 95, 94% range, what that means is don't train at that time of day. Either you were too tired, you didn't have enough energy, whatever it was, you were not training at your peak speeds, and that is not effective. Like it honestly, if you get into a session and your first five swings can't get within 3 or 4 miles an hour of your personal best, you honestly should put the clubs down and just come back the next day. Like it, overspeed training only works if you're moving as fast as you can. So just always take that into consideration. But that's what that effort score number is in the app. And I think that's actually one that I like to look at with players a lot because a lot of times somebody will be like, yeah, I'm not quite getting the gains I thought I would. And I'll be like, well, what do your effort scores look like? And they'll be like, well, I'm usually somewhere right around that 96 to 99% range. I'm like, well, that basically means that every session you're having, you're getting slower, meaning that either you're too tired or you're worn out. And then they're like, well, I'm doing it after I play golf. Well, that's not a good time to do it, probably. So,
Mhm.
anyway, take a look at that. I think that's very important. Another thing to look at during this training cycle is that a lot of the other supporting protocols are fine to do. You don't have to completely, you know, I think this is another confusing point, and we're working on getting some things out to make this more clear. But when you go through the physical assessment in the app and you go through these assessments and it says, hey, I need you to do ground force level one, and I need you to do full body mobility, and I need you to do overspeed level one, and I need you to do squeeze. I think that can become a little bit overwhelming for people, except that you got to realize that each one of those protocols, we have designed those to take no more than like 10 to 15 minutes. So if you're designing maybe like a 45-minute to an hour practice session for yourself, it is very possible to get a number of these different things in. They also don't all have to happen at the same time. Maybe, you're maybe you get that mobility protocol and you get overspeed level one and you get ground force. Let's say those are the three that you really need to start with to optimize your speed training protocol. Well, the day that you're going into the gym to maybe just do your normal workout, do the mobility protocol and maybe also do your overspeed training in the gym that day. And then when you're out to, hit some balls or maybe you get out a half hour before one of the rounds you're going to play, go through your ground force mechanics protocol then. So it's all about fitting these different protocols in to get the most out of that complete program.
And I'll add to that, Mike, because I got an email from a user the other week, which I thought had a good question, and they brought up this concept of like any ones that are kind of contraindicated. Can I not do this if I got this? And again, I don't look at these like different medications where there's an interaction between ground force and mobility that's gonna just deteriorate your golf swing if you do those together. I think as Mike pointed out there, all of these things can be very helpful to you. And it's just kind of about finding the schedule that works for you to do two or three on a day and rest for this. I think as Mike brought up, keep a close eye on that effort score during your overspeed sessions. They are still the foundation of what your training should be. And so, kind of mix and match those other things, and you can make a lot of different scenarios work that just kind of work best with your own situation.
And this comes from years and years of experience building programs for players and thousands of programs that we've built over the years. Every single time we build a program, we assign all of these different modules, I like to call them, of different types of practice. You have your module for speed training and your module for fitness and your module for mechanics. And those things are all their own kind of separate areas. But what I think is so powerful that's in the app is it's really giving you access to the years and years of program development that we've done that has some assessment in there that's going to personalize that to you and recommend which ones are going to be the biggest bang for your buck on those. Now, obviously, if you're working through these protocols for 2, 3, 4 years, there's probably some more advanced ones that we don't have in the app yet that are maybe coming, or that you could definitely contact a local professional and build on. But I guarantee for 99% of you out there, if you get this app downloaded and go through some of these different protocols and organize that program for your schedule, you're going to see some major gains in a lot of different areas. Speed and power, obviously, but you're going to see other good things happen as well. All right, let's talk a little bit about maintenance phases. So, in the maintenance phase, warm up. It's always important to be doing these warm-ups during the maintenance phase. I don't know how much I mean that's just always the case. Like that's another one. You're gonna have a little bit less of that before and after speed variance. Like if we go back and look at this, maintenance phases are almost the opposite of this, right? Like you're not dealing with high before and after variance. You're not going to be dealing with as much fatigue because you're only doing it once a week. It's going to be easier to peak out some of those speeds. Now, other protocols are still fine. In fact, there's some specific ones that I would really like you to do in that. Uh, Ball speed application is one that's really important. If you haven't been doing the ball speed application protocols yet, when you get into those maintenance phases, you should definitely start ball speed application at that point. Because again, think of overspeed training as making changes to the system, trying to get our body to work more athletically, to create more speed and power. And then think of those maintenance phases about being time to rest a little bit and kind of get things to normalize. That's a great time to apply the things that you've learned during that primary phase into getting more ball speed. So check out the ball speed application protocols. Those are big. This would also be a time to continue or even progress the mechanics side of the protocols, the fitness side of the protocols, all of that stuff you can continue to do during those maintenance phases, right along with the 1 time a week on the speed training. And we've seen a lot of people that it actually makes sense for them to do it then because they're not doing as much overspeed training. They can put in some of these other modules at a little bit more intensity. Now, once we get into these second training cycles, third training cycles, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh year of doing this training, this is where we can get a little bit more advanced with some of the things that we're doing. Um, there's two protocols I'd like to highlight here. Um, One of them is what we call our ASAP protocol. We call it Advanced Speed Development. This one is a great protocol that Jason Glass built for us that does some more like we will call potentiation drills right before you do your speed training. And this is something we've had a lot of success with a player, especially players that have been working with the system for greater than 2 years, I would say. Tyler, you want to talk a little bit about potentiation and how that works?
Yeah, it's again really cool concept that's so founded on some of these exercise science principles, exercise physiology principles, which is basically doing something before and kind of explosive high velocity movement that really helps you kind of tap in and kind of ramp up some of the motor unit response that you're going to get during that movement. So an example of this might be you're doing box jumps or a vertical jump and maybe you do a really heavy deadlift right before that, and then go over and do this jump really quickly, and you've kind of fired up the motor neurons a little bit, and then you do this jump really well. I've seen at the TPI Power ones, it's fun to see the way that those long drive guys explore this a little bit. So I've seen some guys present some really heavy isometrics where they're trying to just push as hard as they can without creating a lot of movement. They feel like that really gets the motor units firing a ton, and then all of a sudden you go right into these speed swings and you see these jumps in your speed. So again, concept is all about it's a little bit like lighting the fuse on a bomb, if you will, and kind of allowing that fuse to kind of get lit, get going, and then all of a sudden that bomb kind of goes off during your actual overspeed swings.
Yeah, I think for sure. We've seen some great studies come out of baseball on this too. We have a lot of our baseball academies and players doing some of these type of drills right before they go through bat speed training. Really great results. I really think this is a cool thing to do. It's not one of those that I would say do it in your first week of doing the training, but after you've gotten your body used to doing overspeed training, and this is a great way to really get some more out of it. So check out the ASAP protocol in the app. Really, really fun one. Beyond that, like the only other big change that you're going to do as you're going through these other training cycles is you can do more advanced things like right before you play. This is where what you see a lot of our tour players doing before rounds, like that level 2 warm up protocol where they are making a significant number of swings. And the goal there is not that they're getting a huge jump before and after. Really, what they're after is they're trying to get their body in exactly the same neuromuscular state before every round of golf that they play in. So it's actually a piece that helps them be consistent and make sure that their body feels exactly the same way every time they go out. Because our bodies aren't functioning exactly the same every time we go play golf. We may have slept differently, we ate differently, have different amounts of energy levels, but going through some of that priming can actually get you as close as possible to being exactly in that same state every time. And we'll see that as being a really big feather in the cap for getting more consistent. Tyler, that's a fun one, right? Good concept.
Oh yeah, such a great concept. I like this a lot.
All right. So moving on here, if you're doing our counterweight training, so working with our C club, just notice that these cycles work the same way. I think it's also critical to talk here about how to like incorporate these together. We've tested this a number of different ways, and for most players, it's fine to do the counterweight training right alongside the overspeed training, and you're not going to really see any major issues. You know, maybe give yourself a 10-minute break in between those sessions at least. Um, but it's really fine to do that. If you find that you're getting too fatigued by the end of that and you're not able to maximize your velocity, that would be a time to maybe only do one of them a day or something like that and still maintain that day off break. But generally speaking, you can do these, there's less swings really in the counterweight training. It can be done on the same day without any trouble. You want to add anything to combining those
Yeah,
things?
I would just say on this one, and this is where I love the app's ability to spit out that fatigue score. Where, like, again, I wish I could program with every single golfer, be in front of everyone, but that's kind of what we're getting with some of this data in the app. And so I've even in my own training kind of done that counterweight almost right in conjunction with the overspeed. And what I do is I just really look at the fatigue score, and as long as my fatigue score isn't dropping like a
Effort
rock,
swing.
then I know, cool, I can actually swing this counterweight right after versus, something that might have to go later that day. And like you pointed out, Mike, if you have the counterweight club and you've swung it, you kind of know that it's a little bit of a different stimulus, right? It's just a little bit different. And that was it, what it's targeted for is to train hand speed, arm speed, some of the release. And
Mhm.
so again, I think that what Mike said is totally true is you'll find that you can do it hand in hand without any issues.
Awesome. So those are kind of the big things for the overspeed training side that I wanted to go over today. Let's talk a little bit more about the fitness and mechanical. When it comes to fitness training, we have a number of different protocols that our good friend Jason Glass built for us in the app. And these are really, I'm going to call them supporting physical fitness protocols. This is not the end all be all of what you need to do for your body, but they're really good things and they're a great starting point, especially if you haven't done a lot of golf fitness in the past. These are easy to do for everybody, and they're things that are going to help everybody with some very common issues that happen on the golf fitness side. We have a mobility protocol, we have a lower body strength protocol, a core strength protocol, an upper body strength protocol, and then, like I said, the ASAP protocol, which also kind of falls into that fitness realm. Now we also have, Jason also built us a full balance and stability program that goes with the Force Board Pro drills. That's another excellent piece to add in. And again, something else that can just be added into the overall program. But again, the app will recommend which of these we think you need to do the most, and it'll kind of give you an order of which ones you should do. So, basically, we always like to start with mobility first and then move to the strength protocols if there's mobility concerns, which a lot of people have. So, check those out. Again, it's one of those that we've seen a lot of people now that have gotten started with us and like, wow, I really feel a lot better. Some of these things are working easier. And now they're moving on and finding trainers and getting some more personalized things even past what we can do in the app. So definitely check that out. Mechanics, another really big deal. I think, looking at the mechanics protocols we've built, we have designed these to be, I would say, programs where there's no downside to doing them. If you're good at a certain type of mechanic, whether it's ground force or, sequencing or wrist mechanics, and you do one of those protocols, it's not going to make it worse. It's, just going to reinforce some of the things you do well. And if there's areas there where you're not performing as well, it's going to help those a lot. So these are absolutely full win mechanics programs that are specific, easy to follow. They're not complicated drills, and they will make you better. They will make you better every time. So definitely check a lot of these out. Our ground force protocols, we have three. Our first one really works on kinetic sequence and point of application. We have our level two protocol that really works on direction and timing. Level three that works on magnitude. But on top of that, we also have four new protocols that are out with the ForceBoard Pro. So check those out too. Like the ForceBoard Pro ground force protocols are amazing as well. And they're very, very easy to do. And they will help you out a lot. I think some of those give you even more feedback than some of the stuff we did with these original ground force and protocols. So all of those are available and they're things that can help make you better. We move into sequencing. We have sequencing protocols. Two of those really that are both very, very solid for creating more downswing loading and lag in your golf swing. And then we have the specific lag protocols that are really working more on wrist, forearms, release point, and at some point maybe you can make a face like that, like Podrick does when he's in the downswing. He just loves to rip it, man.
Yeah, these guys are only swinging at like what, 75, 80% on the tee, right? That looks like 75 to me.
Yeah, it's that's definitely not the case. So that's kind of the overview of how to put all these together. I think next thing I want to do here, Tyler, is start to really rip into some of these questions. But
Yeah,
yeah,
I think
if you guys
just
have any questions we can answer about how to put these things together during your in-season programs, please let me know. All right, first question here. I've got just bought the sticks. Where are the training protocols explained? Do you have to buy the app to figure out how these work? So you can download the app, and there's a free version of the app that goes through an awful lot of the protocols. There are some of these, the mechanics protocols, some of the advanced protocols are in the premium version. But I mean, just to talk about that for a sec, the premium version is $9.99 a month or $99 a year. I mean, that's essentially the cost of one round of golf. It's the cost of one golf lesson, and you have access to all this plethora of training activities. It's going to track all of those stats. It's going to show you exactly how you're improving and getting better. It even has physical. It has a full physical assessment in there that's going to help recommend the protocols for you. I don't know very many places that you can go and meet with a professional and get that type of service, for $100 and then have it work with you for the next full year for that cost. So yes, there is a subscription to the premium version of the app, but I mean, we used to charge 10,000 plus dollars a year to build and maintain these programs for players at our academies. And now we're offering it to you guys for $9.99 a month. So I would say start one of the trials. We have free trials for it everywhere. If you don't feel like there's value in that app for $10 a month for what you're getting out of all of these different protocols and data tracking and everything else that's in there, I mean, I don't know what else to say. I feel like there's a huge amount of value there. The free version of the app is also free forever. So you can use that to track your speed training, to track your stats, to track, how you're improving and getting better. Free version of the app is also there and great, and it's there for you. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know what else to say on that one. We spent a lot of time building this app and a lot of, and we feel like it's a very valuable tool for you. Um, Okay, we've got another question. You've answered a bunch of questions about preventing injuries and how I do level one and level two training. Well, I mean, again, the how do you do the level one and how long do you do those training protocols? Like
it
the app
looks like,
tells you
Mike, they were
exactly
saying
how
that
many weeks,
we
right?
that
Go
we
ahead.
answered them all. I think they were saying that
Yeah.
we answered them all already. So
All right. Well, I'm glad that we did. Thank you. Um, so next one, do you have any plans to coordinate with other platforms like Whoop for fatigue recovery strain, or do you have um Yeah, so I do. I mean, I love Whipstrap and what they do as far as like the recovery standpoint. I mean, again, I think it's a similar type thing where, you got to kind of look at the things you did the day before and how it affected your scores, right? Um, as far as specific recovery strategies, like I don't foresee us ever creating a protocol for icing or a protocol for, massage therapy or any of the different, I mean, we have all our athletes do all kinds of different things from cryotherapy type things to stretching, and there's a lot of different things. That one, and Tyler, you can talk on this one too, but that one to me gets a lot more personal on what each person should do. Again, we've created protocols that we know are going to work and be positive for everybody, right? Um, it's harder to do that once you get into the recovery side because I think there needs to be a little bit more almost medical assessment of what's going on there before we start recommending what the right things are to do for recovery. I mean,
yeah, and
general things like resting, stretching, icing, things like that. I mean, I would do that after most activities at this point,
yeah, and
but
I would say, Mike, if the question that Craig is asking is related to like, let's say maybe you wake up one day and your Whoop score is really low, you take a couple of swings and you find that your swing speeds are low. I think that's actually a great time to move away from the overspeed training and say, hey, for today, I'm not going to do that. So my recovery training would actually be, hey, I have something here that says I need to work on mobility. Well, guess what? When my recovery score is low on my whoop because I didn't sleep very well the night before and whatever it might be, awesome. Then don't do an overspeed training. Do a mobility day. Give yourself a recovery day from the overspeed training. Maybe you do one of the mechanics pieces, and then the next day you wake up and your whoop score is great. Cool. Then, yeah, have at it for the overspeed training.
Yeah, great question here. So, any trade-in program on the original version of the Speed Sticks for the newer version? Speed Sticks Pro are cool, friends. Tyler just has his set sitting in his office today, but they are a lot of fun. I highly recommend them. Definitely improved version. Um, we are working right now with a couple different veteran and military organizations to do some donations of the original version of the Speed Sticks to their organizations. And we are going to be offering a trade-in program coordinated with that program. So just stay tuned to all of our social channels and emails. We'll be launching that live here in the next couple weeks. But that is definitely something that is coming. And all of those are going to be donated to a really good cause. So it'll be a kind of a cool win-win for everybody on those. If you've already gotten the speed sticks, I hope you love them though. They are a lot more fun to swing in my opinion. But the old ones still work just as well. So yeah, there we go. Next question. If I don't have a swing speed monitor, so I can judge my improvement based on distance on the range and off course, or can I? Absolutely, you can. You should see improvements in distance. We have seen that in live studies on the golf course. But I would say the first thing is that if you don't have a swing speed monitor, I would just get a PRGR as quickly as you can because it will help facilitate that training, give you better feedback, and allow you to track those stats in more detail than anything else you can do. And I mean, I believe they retail at 229 right now. So I mean, it's not like you have to buy a $24,000 TrackMan to get this data. I mean, it's a pretty affordable way to get a whole lot of data stat tracking and keep all of this going. So yeah, I mean, if you want to, I mean, heck, you can measure these on the driving range if you know how far you're hitting the ball and you laser it and things like that, or you walk them off even, you can definitely see your gains there. I would say that there's a more elegant way to do that, and it's not a huge investment, and it's a very valuable tool that you can use for a lot of aspects of your game. Um, what should you do once you've completed level 5? Okay, good question. So if you've completed level 5, that basically means that you've gone through our third training cycle. Once you've finished the third training cycle, we recommend that you go back and do the third training cycle again after maintenance. Now, that's an ideal time if you haven't added things in like the ASAP protocol to do some potentiation before it. You could do that, add that in right before. If you haven't done any of our counterweight training, add in counterweight training and do that alongside your training cycle 3. If you haven't done the mechanic stuff or the squeeze training, or if you have, basically that's a great time to start to add in some of these supporting features, supporting protocols that can help really optimize your system. And it's the same thing that a lot of our tour players have been using it for 10 plus years now are doing with it as well. They're always going back through those advanced drills and they're just adding on to it. You have anything to add there on that,
Ian,
Tyler?
yeah, I would just say that Ian actually asked that was Ian's question. He actually asked a follow-up question that I think goes hand in hand with this too, where they say they see their speeds going up during the training, but finding it a bit hard to transfer when actually hitting balls. I think what Mike's described right there is this really powerful idea of like if you haven't during these maintenance phase been doing the ball speed application for sure, like this is a great time to say, hey, let's take maybe a little bit more extended time where I'm just doing a 1 day a week training and maintenance. And now I'm going to start doing these ball speed applications. Now I'm going to start doing some of these other things to really try and make your movements more efficient, translate it out to the ball. So I'd say, instead of just being so quick to cycle right back into the 3 days a week of training, let it be a time to kind of take all this foundation that you've built and start doing this training that's meant to help you find those gains on the golf course.
Yeah, I think it's a great point, Tyler. All right, next here. Did I hear recently that you now have a single training club with interchangeable weights? Can you talk about that? Yeah, Glenn. So the new Speed Sticks Pro does come with 3 clubs still, and we recommend highly using 3 clubs when you go through this training because it's just a lot faster, it's easier, and it's more effective to not have to be adjusting weights and unscrewing things. during the session when you're speed training. However, there is a way to use the Speed Sticks Pro set and just use the blue club in that set. And you can use the blue club as all three weights. Like we call it our travel set. So if you take the blue club and you just take the weight out, and then you use whatever weight is recommended, and then you use the travel club, the big weight, you can use one club with those two other weight plugs, and you can do the training with that. So you could only have to have one club in the bag. Again, highly recommend using all three if it's in an area or a situation where you can, just because it's way easier to pick up the next club and go than to have to adjust those things every time you're going between the different drills in the protocol. All right. Sorry if I missed, late to join. But in season, can gains be made or is it strictly maintenance? You can absolutely make gains during season. I think it really just depends on the type of golfer you are. And again, I want you to just know that when you start one of those primary training phases, the whole goal of that primary training phase is to see before and after gains. So you got to just take that into consideration when you're doing the training relative to when you're playing golf. Again, I wouldn't start a primary training phase the day I'm going to play in a competitive tournament. The chance that you're going to be hitting clubs a little bit different distance than normal is absolutely there. So just have to take that into consideration. But for a lot of players, we have players that go through these primary phases during the middle of the season all the time. All right, good question here. That you've been using this indoors on TrackMan, and then you went out and used it on Blast, and you saw different numbers going in. So, is there any way to account for this in the app? There really isn't any way to account for it in the app, but what I would say is this: is that if you're using, like, if you're collecting your data, I just recommend collecting your data on the same device. It would be really easy if I knew that like Blast was always 1% higher than TrackMan. But the problem is that it might be 1% higher for your training, it might be 2% higher for the next person, might be 1% less for the next person. So it really varies a lot, in that depending on some different aspects of that swing. So there's no way to normalize it, to all of the different launch monitors that are on the market. I would just recommend being consistent with what unit that you use or which type of launch monitor you use during the training. It's one of the reasons we so highly recommend the PRGR because you can take it anywhere. It's little, it's easy, it's accurate, it's consistent. And if you're using it indoors, it works. If you're using it at the range, it works. So that's one of the reasons that we always I would say recommend that unit so highly. All right,
Yeah,
Tyler, last
I'm a
words here
day.
on in-season training. Anything else you want to add?
I would just say, and I know I said this halfway through, but for those who maybe blanked out for a little bit or came late, don't stop doing your overspeed training, right? At the very least, you've worked hard in the off season, you've worked hard during these training phases. Get one really, really good session in every week. Find a time that works, get that really good session in, do it for as long as you need to make sure that you don't lose all these great benefits that you had during your off season.
All right. Well, I think we're going to end it there. Everybody, there's some great specials on the website here for, first major of the year. Everybody check those out. Everybody, really appreciate your time this afternoon. I hope you enjoyed this. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us at any time. And until then, we'll see you next time.